adapted version of CEFA. So first of all, thank you for coming. I hope you're enjoying your stay up to now in Aruba.
Absolutely.
One of you to introduce yourself. So I'm going to start with Rob. So a brief introduction of who we are. And my first question at once is, what motivates you to be involved in circular economy? All right. So Rob, go ahead.
Wow, thank you. That's a good one. Well, my name is Rob Omen. I've been active in the field of circular economy for over 7 years now. And what motivated me to be active in this area is that I think this is the first framework that brings together the ecological elements that we need to work so hard on making those right again, but uniting that at the same time with the economic principles that are so much here in our world. And I think to get every stakeholder along, it's so important to unite this economic and ecological principles. And that was for me really the motivation and the eye opener back then to become active in the field of circular economy. What do? I have multiple roles at the moment. My main role is I work for a startup in the Netherlands Medester. And Medester has developed an IT platform to help the construction industry give an identity to all products and materials in real estate, making sure that every building receives a material passport so that the materials get an identity and they don't get lost anymore. And aside from that, I work for a small consultancy firm in the Netherlands that does work in strategic advice and business development for circular economy. And aside, a voluntary role for both the Circular Economy Platform of the Americas and Holland Circular Hotspot in the Netherlands to promote and advance the circular economy around the world. I am from the Netherlands, but I live in Mexico at the moment. So very much an international scope on this. And therefore also very happy to be here and see how we can advance the circular economy further in Aruba, but around the world and the further region here as well. So thank you for having me here.
Thank you very much, Rob, and welcome. Linda, please introduce yourself and for circular economy.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I've been living, my name is Linda Breukers. I've been living in Latin America for the last 11 years. And when I arrived 11 years, I noticed that everything that we take for granted, maybe in Holland or in Europe, about the environmental, but even more the social part, it's different in Latin America. And when I started working 7 years ago in waste management, namely, I was really triggered by the role of the informal waste sector. And I think talking about sustainability, I think in Europe or in Holland, when you think about circular economy and everything that we work on, it's really focused on the economical part and the environmental part. And I think in Latin America, we really have to focus as well on the social part. So that's, I think, it's the three aspects of sustainability really come together in this part of the world. And as well, like there's garbage everywhere. So I think that makes working in this field so interesting that you can, if you do a little bit, you can help a lot of people. You're always aware of the big maybe targets or things that we have on visions on the long term. But for me, it's the role of the social part of the sustainability. That's really interesting.
Great, interesting. I think we have good material to discuss in a bit. And when Octavio finishes, I'll basically formally introduce the team we are going to discuss in this panel. Go ahead, Octavio.
Thanks, Kevin. Well, hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be with you here in this table, sharing thoughts. As Kevin was saying, I'm Octavio Torres. I'm the co-founder of a startup called Valopes. It started in Chile, and now it's working as well in Colombia. at Balopes, well, where basically we have been focusing on helping the industry to digitalize their environmental flows in order to grasp better what can be done from a data perspective, so for that companies can take data-driven decisions of how to improve their performance, environmental performance, and sustainability performance. And the reason why I ended up working in this field mainly was, I think, in a part, when I was little, all the opportunity I had to visit the farm of my grandfather and realizing how nature was so beautiful and it should be conserved. And well, when I went to university, I studied industrial engineering, and then I was always thinking about, well, this should be applied with an environmental purpose as well as economic, social purpose. And I ended up studying industrial ecology in Norway, and basically this gave me all the tools, box, and mind framework to do what I'm doing now. And yeah, I'm really happy to be here. I'm really looking forward for this discussion here, and as well, thanks to all the people that are supporting and the organizations that are supporting this space, because I think this type of space are more important in these critic times where we have to work along in order to shift what's happening with the economy.
Thank you, Octavio. So you can all hear, I mean, the audience can hear, we have all different backgrounds and disciplines and also experience. And that's the enriching part of having such a conversation. So the topic that we are going to discuss during this session is, to read it out clearly, how to realize circular transition, right? And I would like to touch many things, but one in particular is public and private spending. Because in a previous session, the session 1, this topic was touched upon, especially the part of financing. Coming to the conclusion, or I came to the conclusion, that the ones who manage the funding or the money flows are at the global level are the critical actors to really step up, that need to make a mind shift or reconsider their ways of what they invest in, for us to even think about a potential circular economy future. So first of all, I want to ask you, what have you been seeing lately in the region when it comes to private or public funding directed to circular economy? So let's start from here and we go there. Yes? So Octavio.
Well, from my side, like my experience has been more related with the private sector, mainly because I'm the nature of the business that I'm at, it's B2B. I had the opportunity to be working in this field in Latin America, well, in Chile and in Colombia in the last 5-6 years since I came back from Europe. And what I have seen is that there has been a radical shift from decision makers in companies, where they're actually starting to realize that sustainability can pay off, even though they're early adopters. It's not widespread, but I think there is like this snowball effect that it's taking place, which I mean, it's really important, because at the end, even though there has been as well evolution in the strategy frameworks from a policy standpoint, at the end, it's the private sector which can embrace and push this introduction of this new type of productive systems and shift in the way how we consume as well. So I think we're going in the right direction, but I think we need to boost it up. And that's when, of course, all the framework from the legal improvements and strategies should combine. And what we have seen is that countries are starting to promote this type of strategies, circular economy strategies. But I believe this is not enough, in the sense that sometimes you can realize the work is not well interrelated between the same government areas. So I think that's something that they have to work along together in aligning the different ministers to, promote and try to work along. So I think it's an interesting time to be working in this field, in this part of the world. There is plenty of things to do, and yeah, I hope this type of events and this type of conversations can lead us to face up this transition and just help with whatever we can do from our expertise to promote it.
Well, switching now to my Dutch colleagues, because that's an interesting part also of this table, is that you both are from the Netherlands, right? And you know the European reality. And you've been working all these years in Latin America, and you've experienced all the whole spectrum of from waste pickers all up to the policy making process. And linking it back to the financing or the funding, right? I've noticed a lot of funding coming from European Union to the region. How do you see this working out, and what benefits are to be accrued for the countries here in the region?
Yeah. Yes, I think I've been working the last like 18 months for the Colombia Ministry of Environment on circular economy, and I think that's part that's missing. I think the part of the public policy part framework has been missing, I think, in most of the Latin American countries. So if you really want to incentivize the private companies, you need to have these incentives, economic, financial incentives, and make sure that they have maybe, I don't know, pay less taxes, or if we say like use their taxes for circular economy projects, if they use maybe in their final projects the 25 or 30% of PET recycling. Like I think that's an example we all know. Okay, then you pay less taxes. Like really think about how we can help from a public part to private part. I think if the money comes, that's sometimes maybe too easy. From the European Union, I think the Europeans should really think about how to invest and help the circular economy or the governments in Latin America with this part, because it's easy as well. European Union is helping with a lot of maybe seminars, events, but it's really difficult, I think, to really invest the projects or the things that we need in Latin America. It's not, and yeah, for me, the social part is then really important, because I think when we talk about European Union, there's like a basis. We already have like the linear economy is working. We have people have like a formal job. So it's the step from maybe the linear economy or the recycling economy towards a circular economy. It's a smaller step. Well, in Latin America, we really need to first maybe think about this basic stuff before we can make that next step. And I think that's how the European Union should really think about in what do they want to invest. And I think sometimes we are missing this between the reality in Europe and what's going on in Latin America, and as well. And we were talking about it as well. Like we're not going to take the same steps in Latin America that the steps that were taken in Europe the last 20 or 30 years. So maybe if we're going to make these roadmaps, I think in Peru and Chile and Ecuador, they're working on these roadmaps. Really make sure that you understand the local conditions and really invest in things that local economy will help, and not do it on basis of the information we have from Europe. I think that's really important for making sure that circular economy will be a success in Latin America. And I think that and then working together from the European Union with the local governments and helping the local governments design these policies that we need over here to incentivize or help the private sector. I think that's what we could invest more in. Have a better understanding of the local markets.
All right, that's a good point. Rob, how do you see it?
Yeah, elaborating on that, I mean, I've not been in the region for that long, so in that sense, I'm reading a lot from the experiences you guys have. But if I may, I would like to zoom out a little further. We've been this year in the middle of the pandemic, and what you see, at least in the US and in Europe, UK, there has been created like $6 trillion out of thin air. And we are, all the governments around the world are able, or not all, but like in the EU, US, from what I know, able to support the economy because of what is going on now. So from my perspective, the argument that often money is a challenge to achieve this transition to a circular economy, I think if the will is really there, we can create and make available the financial means to do so. And aside from that, I also think the way we look at the moment at economic growth and how we make money and what making money actually means is that oftentimes banks, if you talk about financing the circular economy, it's like, oh, there's risks whether this product as a service model is actually going to be profitable, and therefore we don't finance it. But if you drive, I have a background in real estate, and oftentimes I think here on the island as well, but in the Netherlands too, if you drive through certain industrial areas, and you can see how wrongly designed things have been, and certain places are empty. We banks and institutions have to write off such bad linear investments, and that we also allow in our system to happen. And when it comes down, from what I've seen, to financing new circular models, financial institutions, I often want way more security. I wouldn't say 100%, but to make sure that it'll work out. Whereas in the current system, so much is written off and written down every single day. So I think that myth of we're not sure whether the circular economy is profitable. Our linear economy is not profitable either. I mean, in the way we measure and calculate it, yes. But in the end, from a conceptual framework, a circular economy is always more profitable because there's less waste. Briefly, or would you like to briefly zooming in on the question on public spending? So I think that governments could do way more in that, and luckily in from what I know in the Netherlands and the European Union, there is more and more programs and really hundreds of millions or a couple of billions of euros becoming available in this area, so that financing is becoming more available. I think companies can make use of grants and loans that are organized by the EU or the Dutch government, for example. But I do think we still have a step to make for the more regular financial institutions to step into this into a more larger scale. And I think there is still a gap there. And my assumption is, but looking at you guys, that is similar over here, that there is still a large gap in what the private financial institutions can do to stimulate this further.
Those are great observations, and it triggers a question at once, and maybe you can answer it, Octavio. Why is it that up until now, and please correct me if my observation is wrong, anything that we know that is happening on circular economy in this region is at the moment mainly financed by European Union or someone external to the region? And I ask myself, why? What is the reason?
That's a great question. I mean, actually, I haven't before framed it from that point of view, but it's true. Like now that you tell it, well, first, I believe that the nature of what's been taking place in this region, that we are an emergent region, or most of the countries are emergent economies, which have to tackle down other social problems that are maybe more important in quotation mark space regarding, I don't know, having access to water or having access to sanitation, makes that most of the efforts of the local governments can go focus on that. I can speak from what I know the best, that is Colombia, and we have like several issues there regarding not only like the social inequalities, but as well these other trafficking problems. So that blurs the capacity of the governments to understand that we are in a critical times where we're just in the right time and moment of sort of like history to shift and let's say refocus how we have been growing the economy without understanding that we're in a system that is starting to collapse, which is the ecological system of the earth, and that we haven't took under consideration that all the externalities, well, at the end have erosion, the capacity of recovering of the system. So this sense of urgency has blurred out, just to like highlight it. And when you start realizing that if you don't shift or you don't understand that the materials that are being employed and are being consumed are materials and they have energy embodied, they have emissions embodied, and that if you don't divert it from landfills, well, you will be in big trouble because these resources won't recover or won't regenerate in a couple hundred years. And that's the thing. That's maybe leaderships or political leaderships, they had another type of paradigm that is starting to shift, and with the new generations. And in what I believe is that there is a brighter future coming, but still we need to push it up because the decisions are not being done or make in a holistic way. They're still like, we want to work in landfill, but it's not landfill. I mean, you have to finish landfills, but with a strategy. You need to understand that you have to do legislation for single plastics, but there must be a framework or a system under consideration because it's not always feasible.
Do you,
And guys, feel free to interject, right?
just about Octavio, with what you were saying, how do you look at the organizational capacity of the governmental organizations across Latin America compared to the European Union? For example, I've been living in Mexico for some time and in the Netherlands most of my life, and I think the roots, or how far the roots and the power of the government goes to enforce things to every single person, I think those are of quite different level, which maybe makes it harder to implement certain solutions. How do you look at that from your point of view?
Well, that's a great point. Well, I have to admit that I don't have that much experience working with the governments. Right now, we have been starting to work with government, at least in Colombia, with the government of Colombia. And from what I see, there is like really prepared people, like that are starting to promote all these topics, but not necessarily like the leadership positions, which sometimes are not like given to the most prepared person, but the friend of someone, because of all these politic things. This implies that this might block all the work that the prepared people is trying to achieve, and that those policies or those ideas doesn't actually reach and have like the promotion that it should have. So in a way,
and do you think that, because coming back to the question, like how most of the financing of what is being done is coming from Europe, might that also be a reason that because maybe certain people are put in certain places for other reasons other than the competence that they should have, that maybe that's also why less funding is becoming available for these specific things?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I think maybe Linda has more experience on the public sector. What I'm just saying is what I imagine seeing it from outside as well.
Yeah. No, I think if you go back to the question, I think that we're in Latin America, we're really used to the fact that the money is coming from Europe. not only in circular economy. I think that's a broader. And I think what Octavio was saying, like there's still some basic problems we have, like thinking about potable water, access to electricity. That's the problems the government is coping with. So then it's really nice that there's money coming from another part of the world that will help us to take this next step. But I think it's a problem, because I think that we maybe sometimes it's too easy, or it's too, what I said before, like I don't know if we really from Europe we understand what's going on in Latin America, and it's sometimes it's too easy to. I think we always say in Colombia that we are over diagnosticated. Like we're doing another study and another study and another study, but we're not really making a difference, really implementing things. And I think that's what we really should try to. If we know that there's money from the European Union, make sure that we implement it to make the difference, and not to do like 10 more studies about the same subject and then. We already know the answer. So I think that was something, and that's maybe as well with the governments, that I think we're really good in doing studies and discussing everything. But I think circular economy is about implementing stuff, maybe showing it, and as well maybe making bad mistakes, and then say, okay, I made a bad mistake, and then share it, and then people hopefully can learn from it. But I think nowadays everybody wants to be the first with circular economy strategy. Everybody wants to be the first to show, and take a picture with all of us, but we don't really show that really what we are doing, how we can really make this transition towards a circular economy. Because if we want to do the transition, we have to implement these projects. And I think for me, that should be the European Union should not give us money on the process, but on results. So really make sure that we generate less waste, maybe make sure that we use less electricity, that we use less water. I think that for me, that should be a discussion with, if I give you money, I really want to see results, because at the end in Paris, that's what we agreed upon a couple of years ago. And spending money on doing more projects, I think that's, I think it's a waste of time. So I think that's what for me would be the discussion with all the countries we are in Latin America, to say, come on guys, let's make sure that we learn from each other. There's so many, and I think what you said, like for the circular economy, during COVID, I think everybody now is aware of why we need circular economy. And as well, I saw so many creative, like Colombians are so creative. It's unbelievable. Everything, all the initiatives that popped up. I think the same in Holland, and everybody's helping each other. So if there's a nice business model, or if somebody believes in it, money, there's money. There's money enough on the planet. We have money. But if we really want to make things happen, and then we'll make sure that it is. I think Europe or the US or everybody that has money available should really invest on that, on implementing, doing the transition towards a circular economy.
That triggers another question that we discussed in a previous session, is that, okay, fine, we talk about the transition or enabling the transition towards circular economy, but what is, in your perspective, circular economy, first of all? Because I guess there's also a point that we all need to be directed towards the same overarching goal. And a common point in the region is that depending on who you ask, they will give you a completely different answer of their understanding of circular economy. And I would like to explore it also in this table. Like, what do you understand we should transition to?
Well, just before we got started here, we spoke about this report that was published a couple of years ago about 114 different ways or definitions to define a circular economy. I don't know them all from the top of my head, but what I think is very key in circular economy is that the definition of it contains both the environmental and the economical aspect. Because if you put a linear product into a business model as a service, fine, but then you are just leasing something or renting out something. It's not circular. And if you design a very circular product, I'll get into what that means to me, but it is also key that your operating model, your exploitation model of this product is being designed in such a way that you can guarantee, or at least make the guarantee as high as possible, that you can get these resources back again. Because if you put a lot of effort in, for example, developing your product according to cradle principles, but you're not able to recover that because it disappears in the system, then of course the effort was great, and luckily there is no toxic materials in there, etc. But it doesn't get the second and the third use that it should have. And then coming back more to the ecological aspect, of course, it is not. A lot of people often say, we talked about that too. When people hear circularity, it's about recycling, and of course, you should try to prevent recycling. It's about designing out waste and making sure nothing is ever being defined as waste. So I think design in circular economy is very important. A circular economy is a matter of organizing your supply chains in a completely different way as well. So those are, in a different order, some of the key points that I think are very important to realize.
Do you all agree?
Circular economy.
I mean, do you have the same perspective or understanding of circular economy?
Yeah, but I'm going to as well add the social part. I think it's totally agree with the economical and the environmental part, but I think it's important as well to make sure that if we think about all the actors that are present in the value chain, or that we as well take care of everybody, so that nobody should be left out. I think that's really important if we talk about Latin America. Even more now during COVID, we know that in for example, in Colombia, and I think the other countries, it's more or less the same, but that more than half of the population has an informal job. So we cannot only think about the people that have a formal job, we should have the discussion with the people that have an informal job. For me, that's really important in the circular economy. And I think as well, we should try not use the word waste, talk about materials and products, and think about the beginning of the chain. If we talk about waste, we're lost. So, and I think that's there are different, I think if you talk about Latin America, there's a study that says like in Latin America, it's only thing about inclusive recycling. That's circular economy. No, it's maybe a little part, but if we talk about circular...
Elaborate more about inclusive recycling. What does that mean?
Yeah, so make sure that so we in Latin America, and I know in Asia and in Africa, there's the waste pickers, people that work on the streets that to make it simple, if you put your bag on the street, they will open it or they will pick out the waste that for them has value, or that for us has value. Most of the time we talk about cans, aluminum cans, we talk about the plastic bottles, glass, and they will take it out and will bring it to their warehouse. They will do the classification, separation of the waste, and will sell it to the industry. And where in Europe, this has all been done because in Europe, the source separation takes place. Everybody has 2, 3, 4, 5 bins at their house. So there is a garbage truck maybe every week, every 2 weeks, and it takes one of the bins. Well, in Latin America, you put your bag on the street or you give it to somebody and it will be opened and a waste picker will take it out. So the social part, the inclusive part, is make sure that those people, in Colombia, we have 100,000 waste pickers. If you think about all the kids and their families, it's 500,000 to 600,000 people. I think there are more than 1 million waste pickers in Latin America. We're not talking about a little small group that we have to take care of. We have really think about how we're going to include. And this is only the waste chain. We're not talking about energy, water, because I think in every chain we have people that work in an informal way. And if they don't get the money today, they don't have food tonight. I think that's as well we have to really, we're always saying as well, like they don't think with their head, they think with their belly at the end, because they will be hungry if they don't get the food, the money today. I think that's really what we have to think about, and that of course is for me it's really important in circular economy, but it's not circular economy. Let's make sure that we think about as well how not to generate the waste, and hopefully in 20 years. We have all organized it really well, and all the waste pickers have a formal job with a good salary, and the kids can go to school. I think that's the dream we have. But I think that's really important in Latin America to talk about this inclusive recycling. Make sure that this group of people is part of our vision on the long term. Yeah.
Octavio, do you have the same understanding and perspective of circular economy?
Yeah, I like to phrase circular economy as resource effectiveness. Is at the end understand that resources they have embodied value, which has carbon footprint in body, water footprint in body. And if you just said, for example, this, I just finished drinking it and I just throw it to a bin full of trash, well, I'm just making that this resource becomes garbage. So fourth, I'm just making that the value added throughout the value chain or the supply chain just disappear like this and becomes environmental passive. So I think that all what we consume, what we use at the end is a resource. And if we sort it out or use it properly and reuse it, well, we will extract as much value as possible. So that's the way I like to reframe or conceptualize what is circular economy. As well, this could be because of my background as industrial ecology, where you always are trying to understand how the flows of energy, water, materials are passing through the economy, and that you should always try not to lose this value by just sending or putting it in landfills and so on and so forth. So that's the way I like to see it. But I agree as well with what Linda was saying, and there is a social value or a social perspective behind this. One that is in Latam, that there is a huge population that at the end lives from picking up these, and they think with their belly, and it's like trying to survive, a survival kind of work, if you could say like that. And the other hand, you have the consumers, that is as well social. So you have to work hard to teach consumers that once you finish this is not garbage. This still has value. And if you just sorted it properly, well, you could recover it and you could actually reduce emissions. And there is a lot of impacts behind just 1 second decision of throwing this or putting it in the right bin.
Hey,
All right. So, correct me if I'm wrong, but majority of the arguments you gave or your way of defining circular economy has been mainly from I call it a technocratic perspective, if I'm not wrong. While in the previous discussion, we had a completely different direction when it comes to circular economy, where we're talking about mindset, shifting paradigms, the whole economic system, systemic changes. So that's a good confirmation that, this is great because it touches many disciplines, many areas. But at the same time, for a person that does not deal on a daily basis with circular economy, they might remain still confused about, yes, it has to have a social aspect. It has to have, the embedded energy and the footprint. You have to think about avoiding the creation of waste by consciously, intellectually designing something, to phase out the need even to have waste pickers, and that might be even a contradicting issue. Yeah. So
I would like to get into that.
How do we ourselves that are doing this on a daily basis in our jobs make sure that our collective effort actually leads to the same intended transition?
I think, and that's a good thing, of course, of the diverse group of people that we're having here at CEFA 2020, and that I think we all define it from a different perspective, is also because of our different expertise, and I think that's exactly what we need. Someone who is an expert in policy making has a role to play. Someone who designs things and designs products or buildings has a design role to play. Someone who is an expert in supply chains has a role to play. So I think there are many different definitions, and there should be, because all actors have a role to play. Because if one actor is lacking, that system is incomplete, so to say.
And you wanted to react upon Linda's
Yeah. I did because the social element, and then specifically focusing on all the informal, the waste pickers that are there. I was just wondering, like, I have some idea in mind, but I'd like to hear it also from you guys. Like, if we are moving towards this, transitioning towards a circular system where the waste has been designed out, what could be the new role for the informal waste pickers now in this new economy?
I think if we have a look at the hierarchy of the pyramid, the waste pyramid, I think there are a lot of R's before we come to recycling. I think there's a lot of work that we can generate for the waste pickers. So if we talk about the right to repair, for example, we discussed it as well yesterday. It's I think there's a lot of work that's what we always say. No, circular economy should generate a lot of employment for.
May I interject 1 second? Why do you use the word the right to repair? The right.
The rights, for the consumer, so that everything as well as we say, like a lot of big companies or small companies still have if you only think about profit, that's what the most easy you can do is like use this and throw it away and then have another one, because then the company can sell you another cup and they will make a profit. And I think the biggest example we all know are our telephones nowadays, our cell phones, that we use it maybe 1 year, maybe, if you're lucky, maybe 2, and then you have to throw it away because it doesn't work anymore. And I know that in Europe now they're working on the right to repair to make sure that as a consumer you have this right that you don't have to throw it away. And I think that's a really important step in circular economy. And I think over there's we can generate a lot of employment. And I think that the waste picker or the informal jobs, like make it broader than only the waste stream, that we can help them or make sure that we include them in these value chains. And I think in Colombia, in the policy framework, we are really working on that. Like make sure that we offer them a contract, offer them social security, like these first steps. Make sure that the kids can go to school, have a formal job, and then I think in those steps, like so, thinking about the first 8 R's: remanufacturing, repairing, reusing. There's a lot of jobs that we can generate for these people.
Whilst you're speaking, would there be a very concrete opportunity? And now the people who pick the waste, so to say, that is, we put everything in one bag and it's a mess basically, and there is waste then to start separating that. But if we are before this we started, I briefly spoke about the new concept in the US of Loop Store, which has designed reusable packaging for supermarkets, which is distributed to consumers. And after consuming it, this has to go back to be cleaned and to be refilled again. Could there be a role for the informal waste picker, so to say, to have a bigger role in the supply chain, because instead of a waste truck picking up one bag, there's going to be 20 different types of streams coming in and out of your house that also go to specific locations. Could that be a future role?
Yeah, I think people that work or know Colombia a little bit, we have a big network for the PET recycling. They come to almost all the villages. I think it's the same network, because the waste pickers get to every household. They know exactly. And if there's, I always say in Colombia at least, and I think it's in most of the countries in Latin America, if there's not a waste picker going to that area, that's because there's not enough waste. If there's not enough products, there will be a waste picker, because they know exactly where the products are. So I think, it's the same network. We have to help them, I think, and that's from a public sector part of, make sure that they are part of the new policy. From a private part, make sure that we talk about circular economy, give as well these actors access to financing as well for banks, make sure that they are part of this. But then, the network exists. I think in Colombia, the PETs, I think it's 600 villages that they get to every day. It's 3 million of bottles they collect every day. So the infrastructure is there.
Very, very briefly, like I noticed the same during the pandemic. You as well. You order food in online more, like meals, and then Uber Eats or whatever service there is comes by and drops off your food in a one-time use packaging, and maybe 3 days later they come in again. Like, there could be potentially such a big role for reverse logistics in there as well. And
But then when you have that idea, you just get blocked because there is a legislation framework that says that if you are transporting food, you cannot transport waste. So I mean, there is this type of issues that doesn't enable, or barriers that doesn't enable the capacity of this innovative type of reverse logistic system. But yeah, you got a point there, and I think
for the audience who's listening, we have a very concrete action point here now then on the legislation side and reverse logistics side to work on, I think.
Yeah, I think is what we always say, like the little villages, you can always buy this, like the Coca-Cola or the Unilever. You know that they have been there because you can buy this. You go to the shop and you can buy a beer. So if these trucks can come there, so why is there not a waste management system? So yeah, but yeah, the policy barriers are.
But in line with the same thinking, right? Yes, you can establish the reverse logistics capacity, but I haven't heard much about what it is that you want to cycle in the economy. Because you made a good point at the beginning that saying that you may have the greatest ambition to design the best product that ever existed, make sure that all the chemicals or toxic elements are completely excluded from the product, but still the reality, unfortunately, because of our existing capacity and system and infrastructure, they end up in an undesired mix of other materials that cannot, makes it so complicated or costly to actually be able to recuperate that same value, right? That's one thing. But at the same time, there is a tendency that we remain with our conversation within the framework of a waste management regime, right? Because when you start talking about the R's, automatically that triggers in a person that has through the last 20 years heard about reuse, recycle, and reduce, reuse, and recycle, they might link it at once. So that's it, circular economy. And that is a big problem we are dealing with right now, because I believe that there's also a need to shift the conversation a little bit, not away from waste management sector, because if you talk with waste management or actors within the waste management sector, there's a tendency to want to fit the circular economy within the ladder van Lansing, the hierarchical R's, and then invent 8 or 9 R's, rethink, reconfigure, whatever, right? But that has a risk with it. And I'm noticing that in the region, that as soon as you start talking about, you enter this field or this discipline within the overarching economy or everything that you could talk about, you remain stuck within this dialogue. Question is then circular economy, is it initiated, or is it all about materials? Is it all about the management of these resources, or is it more than that? And how can you make sure that people that listen to us or hear us here do not automatically link simply waste circular economy is simply a new way of managing waste and materials? How do we step away from that? Because we all can agree that's not only that, right?
Well, that's a interesting point you have done there, Kevin. What I believe is that, I mean, we're embedded in a cowboy economy. So I don't know if you have heard that before, but that's a way a professor used to put it. We're just consuming all the resources. That's why always I talk about resources, and just like dumping them or throwing them or destroying them. And those resources are not only the materials, but are as well the human capacity of building them. And that's when you have to understand that there are the 3 dimensions of the sustainability that are working along in the economy, and that should work with the same focus of understanding that we are living in a system that has defined boundaries, that has defined capacity, and that we have to preserve it. And a way of preserving it is to consuming properly, is to having the possibility to access to education that enable us to understand what I'm saying, that we're confined in a space or in an earth that is a system with a certain capacity of regenerating. And from that point ahead, you can understand that, of course, if we're going to put money in something or we're going to invest in something, it should have this principle behind that should try to use materials that are produced nearby by local producers. If not, we'll try to have a green procurement capacity to understand which are the best materials, but then again, try to incentivize that the workshop, it's local workshop, and so on and so forth. So at the end, even though we try to always talk of materials, well, it's a social responsibility. We are the ones creating the economy throughout our interaction with the resources the earth is giving us. So it's a way of as well looking at it in a broader perspective.
Yeah, that's a good point. It actually triggered a name that pops up at once in my mind when you start talking about the limits of the boundaries and the ecological system. There is only one Earth, one system, and we are living on it, and we have to deal with what is available. And that pops up the whole new upcoming stream of thought or school of thought. I'm not sure how to term it, but the donut economy. So I imagine you all have heard about or even read the book of Kate Raworth. Is that the direction we have to go? I mean, is that a way to put it all in a context and allow us to go beyond materials management, resource management, but also the other elements of the whole pie and linking it to sustainable development, or not?
Yeah, I mean, I think what they've been written in the book, I think it provides also a great framework to take it in a bit of a broader perspective, which I think is good because everything we do, for example, and it's still what I'm going to example resource management, but if we're going to make very lightweight packaging, for example, for in terms of CO2 emissions, it's great, but in terms of recyclability, often it's very bad. So having the more holistic, you can understand what's going on, and I think the book on the donut economics is doing that. I think that's good, but I also would want to watch out or warn for mixing too many things at once. I think not everyone is an expert in everything, and I think resource management, for example, needs to be done really well, and then that there is also a social part to it, absolutely. But if Coca-Cola, for example, needs to work out their technical process to make it from a technical perspective feasible, that needs to happen in a certain scope, and of course that needs to be put into relation with the rest. But you cannot always with everything do everything, and I think it's okay for organizations or parts of the economy to do things in a bit of a smaller scope, and of course we need to try and link that into a broader scope eventually.
I think that we are as well. The question is, because we are like this small group in the world, and we only talk maybe with the same kind of people. So we think that everybody understands maybe a little bit of the concept of circular economy, and that everybody believes in climate change, and everybody wants to change the world. I think that's one of the biggest problems that we have. That we are maybe a group of a couple of thousand people in this big world. And maybe most of the world doesn't want to change. Most of the people think that and maybe even I think that I need new clothes every year, and I want to travel. I think that I don't know. I want to drink my beer tonight, and then I don't really at that moment. I don't really care about what's going to happen with this bottle. I think maybe that was what you said about the first discussion they had today, the session. It's about us, and it's about our behavior. And I think that's as well the problem with the waste. We cannot live without generating waste. We will always generate waste. I think that's thinking that we can live on a planet without generating anything of waste. And maybe if we could, maybe, but we don't want to. And I think that's the biggest problem of circular economy, that we are. I read an article, I think last month, about not eating meat, and it said, like, if you think in Holland that everybody stopped eating meat, because I'm a vegetarian, you're alone, because Dutch people eat more meat than a couple of years ago. And I was really surprised. I'm like, why? Why do people eat more meat? But yeah, you're part of this really small group, and you really cannot understand that other people are not thinking about it. That other people are still throwing away when they are in a bus and throw down the streets. People that throw cans away when they're on a bike. People really don't care. And I think that's the biggest problem of the circular economy, that we are a small group, and that if we really want to make a change in the world, we need the big companies, but we really make this mind shift. And this is going to take a long term before we can really get out of this, out of this system, this linear economy towards a circular economy. I think that's.
I want to come back with what Rob said. Is like there are always trade-offs. There are going to be always trade-off, and once we take a decision, maybe there's going to be a ripple effect in 10 years that decision will lead us maybe to a worst case scenario, maybe not. But at the end, I believe, or from what I've seen, it's a human problem. It's like to be aware, awareness. Like most of us, we're not aware of what are the effects of our decisions when we're consuming or when we're talking to people, and that's as well one of the things that if we don't try to change, and I'm not saying that maybe the world is changed, but to be aware of where we're standing at and what are the implications of how we act or react about something. Well, sustainability won't be sustainable because it's about people. And what Linda was saying, maybe we're just a bunch of crazy guys trying to.
But I think it's definitely indeed with what you're saying. Many people are not even aware or occupied with it. So there is definitely a mindset change that should happen, but I wonder whether it will, or whether the whole world will. I remember when I was watching a documentary of President Roosevelt, and so it's about 100 years ago, how they were on a field trip somewhere, and then you saw these the video of the field trip, and how they had a huge box with the plates and all the silverware in there, just like reusable, of course, like what we use at home. And I think, okay, there was no plastic plates back then, so that's just what they did. And then ideally, from a circularity and resource use perspective, we should go back to that. But I wonder if we ever will. And then what you were saying, the large corporations should make this shift. And what I think is that companies or no consumers, if we want to have sustainability and circularity succeed, if we want to do really well, it should not imply any or very little change to the consumer. He should want to prefer this circular product over the linear one, ideally without even knowing it is circular. Because if companies can achieve that, then there is no reason at all for consumers not to change. And of course, this also again depends on industries, but because I wonder if across the whole world at the same time, we can achieve this mindset change that we are aware of here. So I think companies that are able to just create great products for the consumer without them knowing the difference, they just want that, then we are really moving somewhere.
So this is interesting because just a few questions ago, I claimed that we're having a technocratic discussion, and now it's shifted to an anthropological discussion. So
We can do
which
them
is
all.
good because so you're saying, okay, yeah, this all depends on our mindset and the what triggers our decisions, right? Like, why do we make a decision to purchase certain things versus the other? And then so what I'm wondering then, when it comes to the original question about financing, about enabling the transition towards circular economy, I had this question in a previous session whereby I asked, okay, how do you trigger the people that have the influence or the capital, the means to invest in the direction we need to go? What do we need to have in place for them to be triggered to make that decision?
I want to just very quickly kick off with an example that I see happening, and I'm very curious because some people have a very different opinion about Apple. Apple in recent years, I think, has been really making a change towards sustainability. And if you, they still introduce new iPhones every year, and you might wonder, do we need to do that? But if you read their environmental reports, the amount of recycled rare earth metals in the newest iPhones is really increasing every year. And Apple does communicate about that a little, but they just present you with a great phone. And they also, since a couple of years, have, at least in the US, I think, the option that you can kind of rent your phone for a fixed amount a year and you can upgrade. And of course, there's a commercial incentive in this as well. But you see, they are really scaling up their recycling and disassembly and recycling capabilities. And so I think there are companies out there starting and that have the capital in place and starting to actually do it from a business perspective.
But then staying with the example of Apple, we know that I have an Apple right here, right? And probably in a few coming years, I don't know what percentage of the global population will have an Apple in their hands. And I ask myself simply about numbers. You may have the best intent to design things properly. You might have all the capacity in place to disassemble the product and recuperate the flows of materials. But there's a physical limit, literally, because we have a global growing population. And at the end, it doesn't match up. You may have these great business models, but I ask myself, each physical thing has a retention time. Will go into something, stays into the system, and before it's available again. And the speed of growth of our population, or even if you talk about socioeconomic changes that happen in the global population, will trigger an increased amount of demand for all this stuff. So where does this? So is that enough? I don't think so.
No.
Right?
I mean, it's really difficult. I remember this equation, iPad. I don't know if you have heard. Impact equal population, affluence, and technology. So it depends what you were saying. If we are more people, well, we will consume more. If we have more economic power or purchase power, we will be more affluent, so we can consume as well more, and then we are generating more impact. So seems like we just have the technology as the solution for this equation. Of course, this equation is, I could say, I don't know if flawless, but it's really difficult to grasp what you were saying with just a multiplication of three variables. But what I believe is, like, of course, technology has the capacity, a potential to help us tackle down impacts. Mainly, that's what I'm trying to achieve through Valopes from a data perspective, even though I understand that who takes the decisions are human beings, and we as human beings should, I don't know if it's right to say it, but should try to change the values we're interacting with the earth. I mean, we, even though we are in a really westernized world where we like to consume and we like to live well and we like to have prosperity, maybe prosperity should mean other type of things, as well-being, as having health, and that's as well starting to change. We're adapting to a new reality that we have, in a certain way, unbalance the ecosystem, and this contingency or pandemic has arrived, and most likely this will be something that, hopefully not, but might be more frequent in the coming years. So we as well gonna be we as well have the capacity to adapt, and we will have to, in a certain way, adapt. If not, we just should continue focusing on exploring the extra. Yeah, like, I mean, what they're trying to do. The
No, but
Chinese,
yeah.
this week or last week, they're starting to drill the moon to see if they can actually take out the water, and that's another way of actually tackling down this resource efficiency problem, or however you want to call it. But yeah, I mean, it's not a tricky question how to achieve it, this transition, but at the end, it's about values and how we interact with each other and with the earth.
But I think we all. I think a lot of what we discussed the last like 8 months or since COVID started is like, okay, so when it ends, maybe like in March we thought it would end in, I don't know, in May or in June, but that we will change. Like now we know like it's really important, the earth, and we know like it's way more important to be happy, to be with the people you love, like well-being. But I really think that if the moment this stops, we'll be flying everywhere again. I really don't think, and that's too bad. And I think even, that maybe we're even all humans, we're going to look for the second planet instead of really changing our behavior. I think that's and that's what you say is like, I think we always say in Colombia, I think it's a saying like the most richest Colombians want to be like the Europeans, and like the middle class wants to be like the people in the US, and that's what everybody wants to be like, living like the way they live in Western Europe. But we cannot. Or we need to look for another planet. And I wonder if we're really going to say with all of us, okay, so maybe let's use less resources, make sure that we take care of the planet, or that we're really going to look for the second planet.
I still have some hope that we can change our mindsets as well. I mean, with the example of President Roosevelt I gave earlier, that's only like 100 years ago, when we still did it in a very different way. And like what you're
So are you saying we should go back in time, and still back in traditional customs and culture?
with our mindset towards consuming things, yes, and just to take it a little broader, if I may, and that's the same as the mindset that we always need to make more money, or that governments strive for full employment. I think also, instead of, for example, focusing on GDP growth and with that achieving full employment, why can't we achieve the fact that GDP stays the same and that we produce the same, but that we do it more effective, and that the form of economic growth is that instead of you having to work now 40 hours a week to earn your salary, that if in 10 years you only have to work 30 hours a week to have the same purchasing power as you have now, that is a way more noble form of economic growth, because you have more free time on your hands than always this idea of more. So, but that of course comes with education system, and then we go much broader. But I do have hope we can make some shift there. And me having moved quite recently from the Netherlands to Mexico, I also see differences in the way people interact, culture, the relationship towards work and towards. So I have not lost hope in that sense, that we cannot change a mindset and towards where the opinions will differ. But I mean, the mindset around the world is not the same with everyone, I think. So I think that leaves room for us to to still change things. Yeah.
So talking about the global mindset, we are here on a small Caribbean island, which has a historic relationship with the Netherlands and therefore Europe. And you've been here for 1 or 2 days already, and you've been able to take a look around or observe the island. And one of the purposes of bringing CEFA this year to Aruba is also to have this conversation and hopefully convince and or inform my fellow Arubans about what circular economy is, its potential, its relevance for the island's interest and benefit. What would you like to leave behind in a sense of or recommend to my colleagues or the decision makers on this island and other folks from the private sector, the public sector, civil society on an island like Aruba? What would you recommend us to do when thinking about the future?
I think first of all, keep it simple. I think you have a really beautiful island. It's not that big, so you can have an impact. And I think if you talk about an island, it's we think about circular economy. All the materials and products that come on the island have to go off again, or have to go to Parkietenbos, to the landfill. So think about making steps that less materials, products come to the island. I think it's small steps, simple steps. And as well, I think that's as well, if you think about reactivating the economy after COVID, I think you can make really a difference showing to maybe tourists that you're really thinking about making sure that the island, well, you say like there's potable water, for example. I think there's like these small things that you really can show that. So if there's potable water on the island, we don't need to use bottles of water. I don't know, but make it really think about I think sustainability steps, like maybe even because it's an island, so I don't know circular economy how far we can go, because on the island I think most of the island things that come on the island you don't design them over here, you don't produce them over here. So I think that part maybe is really difficult to make these decisions on the island, because the headquarters of these big companies will not be in Aruba. But you can really think about what the things you wanted to have on the island and things that you don't want to have on the island. I think that's the biggest advantage of being an island. So I think, but keep it simple. Don't invent things from another perspective or really. No, keep it simple.
Well, yeah, I think what Linda says it's important. Keep it simple. It's like really important, of course, as well. Maybe having or starting to work in a green procurement strategy as an island with the critical and biggest industrial sector, as is the tourism. So try to like align most of the players or key players, as well as restaurants, to okay, let's try to understand that we are importing most of our supplies, and from that perspective identify which are like the hotspots you could try to negotiate with the providers. I'm just thinking that could be a way of doing it, but as well working on how you're handling all the materials once are being used. I think that's the other key part of all these is that, for example, I don't know, hotels or restaurants start like, I don't know if it happens already, you could tell us a bit more, but sorting out the main materials. Actually, we were talking before the session with Linda about, is the glass here being reused or is being exported again, or just goes to the landfill? So start working with those key materials so forth to generate a green procurement strategy as an island could be an interesting work to do.
Yeah, definitely. Regarding the glass, I'm not 100% sure, but a point that a lot of people make is that because the island is small, we have about 110,000 people officially here on the island. They always, or when you talk to technology providers or the big investment firms, they always say, well, you're below the threshold. So you don't have you're not interesting enough. And then some claim from a technological perspective that the units that they have to process are at a minimum, X amount of tons per day, which we don't, reach. But that doesn't mean there is a growing problem on the island, which is the waste management. And then I ask myself then, okay, what are the other alternatives? One is procurement, right? But that is more like a way to prevent from this point forward the future continuation of the same depositing into a landfill. But then again, there's the other arm, which is there's an existing problem, and we need to figure out a way to solve that existing problem simultaneously. Because I fully agree. Yes, we have to go towards the direction of consciously selecting or what we prefer to be imported to the island because we know what to do with it. But at the same time, what do you do with the problems at hand? Because there's a built infrastructure. When you talk about buildings, for instance, none of them have ever been conceptualized or designed to be dismantled or decomposed or whatever, taken apart. So there's a standing infrastructure there where we know that in X amount of years in the future, they will all have to be demolished or will enter into the general waste management stream. So I ask myself, and openly here right now, what else can we do?
What I think it's the economy of scale. As you say, like it's a small group of people and it's not feasible economically. It is, but it's really expensive. Everything is possible, but maybe it's going to be really expensive because you need to pay more to maybe if you think about maybe biogas. If you think about all the organic waste that comes from restaurants, of course it's possible, but it will be really expensive. And I think as well for these kind of things, even with Madaster, I think it's really interesting to see if you can maybe start with a project. I think maybe we can look this week for some pilots to as well for the Valopes, all the digital applications that Octavio has. It will be more expensive because it's a smaller group, but it's possible. But yeah, you have to make sure that, or maybe look for the other islands close nearby or close to Venezuela. Look for the other actors in the region. But everything is possible if you have voluntad, like if you want to. But then you have to invest money. But if Rob said, if it's not about money, but it's about well-being, maybe that should be the trigger.
What are the top 3 largest sources of waste? Does it come from the hotel industry, for example, or are those materials from the real estate construction industry? Do we have some numbers?
I think tourism, of course, is the main economic pillar. Correct me if I'm wrong. We have more than 1 million visitors a year. For a population of about 110,000 people. So imagine the on a continuous basis throughout the year, basically you have to double the population, and all the services need to be provided, like electricity, water, sanitation, everything. Also, yes, the pressure. One of the main factors of pressure is the tourism sector, but which is the one who generates our, contributes to our macroeconomic development, but is also one that puts the most pressure on our natural resources and the challenges, environmental challenges that are generated. So, and it's more consumables, food, packaging, products in the supermarket, things that you consume on a regular basis. And I cannot tell you on the top of my mind like which are the other 2 types of sources of waste on the island, but definitely construction, clearing, and building, demolition, and all this are.
But I think as well, electricity is a huge, because all 3 of us tried last night to turn off the AC in our hotel room, and the 3 of us were not possible doing that because I don't know, it's a system like that works that way. But I think that's as well. I think it's not even talking about if we don't want to talk about waste, circular economy, but about the other. I think electricity as well should be, because we know that it's not coming from you're importing the oil to produce. So as well, I think that's one of the things that we maybe should have a look at, not only talking about the waste, but as well the water and electricity. Yeah.
I wanted to put in a few recommendations. What you were asking, like what could we do in Aruba? I think because you're an island, what the rest was also saying, you're perfectly situated to create your own ecosystem in certain things. But of course, there are external dependencies from things you import. But if, for example, consumables, so from plastics, etc., is a very large waste source. In the end, companies like Coca-Cola, etc., worldwide are working on making their packaging more sustainable. They have a lot of initiatives. I could, for example, be the island of Aruba. Could it be of such an ideal scale and also with a manageable, for maybe there is one place where all the waste ends up, could Aruba position itself here in the Caribbean, in Latin America, as the place where I think at a relative good scale, it's not a pilot for 100 people, but will be a pilot for 100,000 people, where at scale, circular economy solutions could be tried out. Like all the hotels and so on, they buy from Coca-Cola, from all these big providers. Could the government enable with these large providers and with the hotels, for example, more advanced recycling systems on these consumable elements? And either way, what you're saying, we have a current problem, like if the packaging is still the same, you have to manage that packaging. But could you also use the island as a pilot place for really reusable packaging that is in glass or in metals, and maybe set up such an initiative to position the island also in this field? And another super practical idea, if, for example, if the water on the island from the tap is potable, like can you, for example, at the airport have the initiative that every passenger that arrives, or you make it mandatory in the price, or you can give it away, receives a beautiful stainless steel bottle of Aruba with, hey, on the island, you can drink tap water everywhere. That's something that everyone will remember upon arrival. And then on the other hand, eliminate the plastic bottles everywhere. Maybe such things also create the necessary awareness. So that's some things I wanted to share here.
Thank you for these pointers. Yeah, you wanted to say so? So one point that making reference to our own efforts as Aruba, right? I'm not sure whether you are aware of it. We have a 2050 circular economy vision document, partly inspired by the Netherlands 2050 vision, and in that, a lot of attention is spent on innovation and education. So I wanted to shift the conversation a bit towards that direction, because we all concluded that it's at the end of the day an anthropological issue of how aware we are, how educated we are or informed, and what are our norms and values, in essence, that triggers our decision making. When it comes to education and innovation, next to the practical recommendations you gave, what potential do you see for an island like Aruba to position itself in the educational field, in the research and development, intellectual property, innovation, more a knowledge economy? Why? Because we don't have resources. We don't have, we only have the beach, the water, the beautiful scenery. But next to that, it's our human capital. So what would you think about or recommend us to do on that front? And this is all related to making the transition towards circular economy, right? Because we're talking about circular economy, but we're trying to give meat to it.
Well, that's a great point you're saying about becoming a knowledge economy. Well, at the end, yeah, if you want to innovate, you need to have prepare people, like prepare society. So it's about education. I'll say, all this problem. In that sense, well, if you want to become like the innovation hub of the Caribbean, well, I'm just inventing something. We should start looking what is happening in the education field, how it's which are like the key yeah programs, professional programs, technical programs that are leading the Arubian education, or it's like the most prepared people being prepared outside and try to connect with those destinations in order to create these links of professionals that can come back to Aruba and provide this knowledge that they're getting outside. There is a program that we took part when I was starting Valopes in Chile, Startup Chile, that had this similar perspective of becoming Santiago de Chile as the tech hub of the South. And was quite interesting because they were just looking or scouting projects abroad in the world and giving them an X amount of money, the government, bringing those minds, maybe, or a lot of those business wouldn't have a survival rate of, I don't know, 20%, and the others will just die after a couple of years. But they were bringing brains that were going back to their countries and creating these connections that are really powerful. So that could be another.
So you're saying basically retaining or avoiding brain drainage,
One
or
thing, or
attracting back the
bringing as well.
talents.
Yeah, I mean, that's some ways of looking at. From what I have experienced, I'm not like really expert in the field, but I see that it's about education. So you really need to have a really well prepared population, or attract these possibilities of brains from the region in order to start innovating in these type of topics with a sustainable focus. Because at the end, what we're saying, Linda and as well Rob, is like the island has a quite interesting size of population to become like an example of circular economy society from this point of view. So you could mix those three areas, but it's something that you have to create, because I haven't seen it from elsewhere, like a hub of circular economy or a circular Iceland where you want to do it from an innovation perspective. So I think it could be a really interesting mix.
What I think it's key, well, it's very key what you're saying, and I think what maybe could be added on top of that is what you asked us earlier: what could Aruba and the stakeholders, the government, for example, do to ignite this? Like, if you have these great brains in place, they should also have something to do here on the island, to say it plainly. So, if the government could identify several key areas, for example, in the construction industry, there's going to be a new hotel built somewhere. This project we're going to select as the one we're going to apply all sorts of circular innovations, the way it is designed. So you have architects in place that are educated with circularity in mind, and from a water management, well, energy management perspective, material uses perspective. And those are all going to be employed on the development, for example, of this new hotel. Or if you talk about consumables, can you define specific projects here in Aruba that it also becomes that a company thinks like, oh, let us try this out in Aruba because we have access to great brains that can help us with this, and we have a reasonable size, I think, in the island to try it out, to enable it, to pilot it. And I think if you connect those two elements, the education, the application of it, that well can not a brain drain, but a brain. How do we turn that around? I think that will help you to enable that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like develop challenges, as Rob was saying, like in key sectors, and then try to promote them. I don't know. But that's something that could work in having this mix of education, or prepare people and make some innovation challenges on these key sectors that could bring along the most impact in circular and sustainability issues for the island.
I think as well what you guys say is like, I think it's important to have the objectives clear. So if you want to be like innovative, you do the education, why? Do you want to generate more employment? Do you want to get the island more sustainable, or do you want to bring it together? But have clear, if it's the 2050 plan, why? And then make it practical, what Rob says, because otherwise it's, I think, yeah, at least people want to see it to implement it.
And I think to avoid the brain drain, I mean, it's a fact you have a very small island here, and although very beautiful, but there is definitely people probably who lived here all their life who want to search for opportunities elsewhere. So I think it's really key that if they're being educated in the field of sustainability and circularity, and you want to at least motivate them to stay on the island, there should be jobs around here in which they can apply what they have learned.
No, a tricky question, because globally we are under this, COVID-19 pandemic, and I've seen a lot of seminars coming across the last couple of months of making the claim, circular economy for the rebuilding of the economy, or circular economy for, reactivating the economy. How do we have to perceive that? I mean, and this is a very valid question, because everybody in the region is asking themselves, yeah, you guys are great upon explaining what circular economy is, but how does this then contribute or help me as a country or as a group of people to reactivate or gain some financial income again in these tough times?
I mean, I think we that COVID, like we were working and we should have been working on circular economy for already years, and some places happening. And I think because of the pandemic, for me, it doesn't make the reason stronger to do it, because the reason was already strong. And your question about that, we need to generate new income again, and how can a circular economy help with that? I think we need to, the fact that we still report, if you open up the Financial Times or the Economist, and it always says still things about, the GDP growth in the US this year was 2.5%, but inflation was as well. So how much do we actually gain? Like, as long as we don't step away from that view, like that's the way to generate income, then the circular economy is not going to give you more income. No, the circular economy is just is providing you a way to, I think, more maintain what you have and to optimize what you have, rather than trees growing up into the sky until forever, because that's exactly the thing we need to get rid of. So I don't think circular economy serves to magically generate all sorts of things. No, it serves to establish and maintain a certain level of prosperity that we have.
But I think if we talk about Latin America, I think it's interesting as well what we said, like 60% of the population has an informal job. And I think that circular economy can help us make the jobs more formalized. And then we talk about, unfortunately, I'm going to talk about the value chain again, but make sure that the waste is not generated, but make sure that you repair, reuse, maintain the product on the planet. I think there we can generate a lot of employment, and we can formalize a lot of the informal jobs at this moment. So I think that's I think that's what the government really is looking for at that moment. Like, make sure that the people get work again, and make sure that we get it formal. If we have formal jobs, people have social security, and people will at the end pay taxes, and that's what we need to as well to. I was looking for the imposters. It is what we have to as well to make sure that the economy get active again. So I think, yeah, we can help, but then maybe it's not even the circular economy; it's maybe the reuse economy or the step before the circular economy. But I think, yeah, step away from the linear economy and make this different step can generate a lot of employment in Latin America and make it formal. I think that's what the government should be looking for at this moment. And I know that most of the governments in Latin America are looking for this. So yeah, for me, I think, and it's as well, keep it simple. It's not that difficult to well, maybe it's really on paper it's really easy. In the practice, it's really difficult. But to look for these kind of solutions, I think they're easy to make sure that you give people social security. Make sure that if they get ill, if they have to go to a hospital, that you know who they are, that they have a social security, that they get well again, and that they can go back to a job again. And at the end, that is well-being, and that's what I think what we all want for our world.
Well, the last point triggered another issue in my mind, in the sense that the economic model. So two things. I agree with you in the sense that why do we keep on using the wrong indicators to measure what we ever define as prosperity? Like you refer to it also like a different definition of prosperity. Doesn't have to be always a monetary sense. It can be health, time, whatever, other dimensions of life. But are we even able to deviate or step away from this system in which we operate and the indicators that are used to measure economic performance?
I think it's definitely possible to step away from that, and I think we should. How soon it's going to happen, I don't know, but a key element, of course, and then we go a bit to the financial, system that we have in place around the world is about more money generation. So the fact that a central bank has the goal of generating 2% inflation a year, in my opinion, it's for a circular economy is the worst thing you can do. Of course, it's done to try to inflate away all the debt we have around the world, but it pushes people to always get more. Even if I've earned something and I nicely want to put that in the bank, I don't do that because it's just going to evaporate. So you're going to search, and I only have a little bit, but you have large funds, and you are searching for a return on investment to maintain your wealth. And that's a very toxic situation to achieve an economy in which we want to maintain value. Because the system is designed in such a way that we need to keep on running and keep on running harder and harder to try to maintain or to a little bit grow our wealth. And that is not because things like material things evaporate, but it's because our system is structured that if you don't do anything, it inflates away. And I think that is a very underlying element that we need to change in order to not have this system in which we need to keep on running for more and more and more. And the fact that a company can or has to write off its assets in X amount of years, and then can deduct that from the profit you're making. So then after 5 years you've written it down, you think, oh, let me buy something new because my profits reduce. For material usage in circular economy, it's super bad. And so I think we should step away from it, but I think there are much larger forces at play with the inflation goals, etc., that I don't know how soon that's going to happen.
So for you, it's more a question of time, not an issue whether it's ever going to change.
I think it's still an issue if it's ever going to change, but is it possible? Like from a practical perspective, it's possible. But I think there are, outside of what we're talking about improving the world, there are other interests at play in the financial world that have an influence on making it profitable for companies to make this happen.
So when you're in a situation of crisis, which Aruba is one of the many countries that is dealing with an ongoing crisis, you have no bargaining position, meaning what is it that you can demand if you're in the weak position, right? I ask myself, is this then the opportunity for resetting or rebooting the system and say, okay, let's actively define clearly what we want, let's say by 2050, a clearly defined goal and objective, and use that as a means for having conversations with whoever is willing and able to help you out with investments. Why am I saying this? Because we are from the Dutch kingdom. We all know that there is an ongoing conversation between Aruba and the Netherlands for financial aid, support, and investments, right? So the question is, what would be the best formula forward?
Yeah, but I think there are a lot of things that can be done that don't cost money today. I think there are a lot of steps Aruba could take, and maybe even showing in the Dutchies that they don't always need the money, or maybe, but look for simple solutions. Look for, so how are we using electricity at the island? How are we using the air conditioning? What are we doing with the water? What are we doing with all the products that are coming? Make sure that you have like a metabolism of the island. What comes on, what comes off, and what is really happening on the island. Make sure we have time. We are in the crisis. If we don't do it now, when? So maybe I think that should be have the clear objective, but really know what's going on and make small steps. And I think for these kind of things, you don't need money at this moment. You can make these steps and hopefully you generate employment, because that's, I think, as well what you want on the island. But instead of looking first for the money and then defining what you want, I think first define what you want, make a good plan, make sure that you can take steps without having this money. And then if you need money, it's really way easier to ask for money if you really have clear what you want, and you can as well show that you're doing things without needing that money. I think this is as well a lot of what we discussed as well in Colombia with the circular economy strategy. It's always people saying, yeah, but who's going to pay for it? Well, there are a lot of things that if we make sure that we don't buy everything, but we lease it, if we will share cars, if we will share cabs, we'll share bikes, I don't need more money. Maybe I even can save money. So I think that's as well, maybe like change the chip, as they say in Colombia, like don't always think about first we need money and then we can design the plan. First make the plan, make some steps, and then see if you need more money.
Yeah, I think what Linda was talking about is understand where you are standing out. I mean, one of the ways she was saying it, and that's one of the things I have been doing the last years, is understanding the metabolism. How are we using our resources? Which are our key resources? Which are our key?
Yeah, and I understand that you're doing for Colombia, right?
Well, I was talking more about like the work from Balopes as general, but now in Colombia, yeah, we're making this assessment regarding the information systems of waste in order to understand first which is the state of those systems, what type of data they have, and how we can use this data in order to create a roadmap that enable us to take public policy decisions from a data perspective. So that's something as well. The data is a resource that is not always being, I don't know if the word exploded, but used in the proper way. And if you have these valuable information systems here, you can start as well from that point, understanding what's your metabolism, which like the key sectors, which are like the key flows, and see which are those baby steps that you can do, fast pilots, not that expensive, in order to just create this snowball effect and then just, well, looking for money to ramp them up and boost those examples.
So information is key, data is key to make informed decision. Yeah,
and maybe I don't know if it's very I haven't worked in the hospitality industry, so maybe it's very naive. But if these ambitions on circular economy, they're here on the island, in these more quiet times, are you able to also excite the hotel industry, for example, and the large chains that are here on the island that have thousands of hotels around the world as well? Like, are you able to motivate them to have Aruba as the pilot island for them to create the most sustainable hotel with their existing hotel, but also if there is a new hotel being built, and that such opportunities that not all the money necessarily has to come from Aruba, from the people and the government, but like I said, maybe it's naive. I don't know how the relationship between the government and those hotels are, but maybe they are willing and see the opportunity. Maybe you can make the opportunity presentable, like, hey, Aruba is the place, and we facilitate you with knowledge, with how do you call that? The licenses are being given to try out new things. Maybe now regulation withholds certain things. That you have others invest in this, because around the world the ambition for sustainability is increasing. So can you incentivize that others want to invest for the purpose of circularity in Aruba, because this is the place to be to try out new things.
Great. I'm so happy to have had this conversation because and it's recorded. So on the whole list of recommendations that we will have to process in the CEFA 2020 report, which are very to the point and practical, and definitely should be shared with our government or other decision makers for them to take into account your ideas and pointers. Thank you for that. I see that we ran out of time, so 2 hours passes by quickly when you are in a interesting conversation. So before we close, I wanted to ask each one of you just to give your closing remarks or anything you would like to leave behind and for CEFA 2020, and maybe other things we should be discussing in a broader regional context, right? And before we say goodbye and close this the session number 2. So I will start with Rob and then finish with Octavio.
Okay. Closing remarks. In form of a recommendation, I think the last part you really asked, like, what can Aruba and the government of Aruba do to reignite the economy and hopefully a circular economy. I think, and it's a cliche thing to say, but working together with your stakeholders is key to make things happen. But adding on to that, I think if you present things as an opportunity, which I believe they are, I think oftentimes many more people are willing and able to give their contribution, to give their help, to make something happen. So don't try to solve everything yourself, but see how you can form a coalition with other stakeholders, whomever they are here on the island and from outside of the island, to make things happen and get started. Don't stay too long in plans. You can write a plan, but make sure it doesn't stay on that form, on that paper, but that something goes into practicality. And I think with the state we're in and the movement that is happening on climate change and sustainability, organizations are willing to do their part. But start with asking that, and things will move forward. And thank you for having me here once again.
Yeah, I think I want to have like listening to Rob, I think 3 remarks. First of all, keep it simple. Secondly, be realistic. It's an island, and it's like 110,000 people, so it can be a nice pilot, but as well, it's 110,000 persons. So keep it realistic, make plans that you really can implement. And don't write these big plans without having any, not even taking the first step. And I think as well, as we say in Holland, meten is weten. It's like when you measure, you know. As well, what Octavio says, if you don't know, if like Rob was asking, what is the garbage or the waste that we are generating on the island? If we don't have the answer, we cannot start. If we know that organic waste is 60%, well, let's do something with organic waste. If we know it's construction waste, well, let's start with construction waste. But first of all, you have to know. And then if you know it, you can take action. But please, let's make sure that before we leave, we have an action plan instead of another idea for another study. Yeah, I think that's the most important.
Yeah, I completely agree with what both of you have said. I just would like to add mainly that, well, what it's the most, or one of the most important things is to have aligned the key stakeholders along the government, because at the end, well, if this is a decision that the government should do, and not just one minister or or another minister, but like a government statement, and as well the private sector, because those are the ones that are going to catalyze all this change. And then, yeah, I mean, keep it simple. Start with, people say baby steps. Well, you could put it small steps, or however you want to address it or name it, but focus on those key sectors once you have more detail about the opportunities regarding the data you already have in the Iceland. So that's an approach that I believe will be the best.
Okay, thank you very much, dear colleagues. So with these final words, I hereby close session number 2. And that's for the audience. Thank you. I hope you had this was an enriching conversation for you, and we look forward to having you for the next session. So, thanks, guys.
Thank
and
you.
Now we can go
Thank
relax.
you for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Cheers.